Welcome to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders just like you. Let's begin with what's making news today on our local news page on civiccentertv.com. Our top story comes from Jennifer Chambers at the Detroit News. Now brace yourselves because it brings me no joy to say the S word live on this program, but here comes more snow. The National Weather Service is projecting 3 to 6 inches of snowfall on Friday morning across our local area, with the heaviest snowfall during the morning commute. Those totals are subject to change at this moment in time as the storm system continues to approach and it's about 24 hours out. But the timing remains the same, mostly in the morning, with the snow dissipating in the early afternoon and eventually stopping Friday evening. That being said, prepare for a slower commute on Friday morning and get your snow blowers, your generators, and your shovels ready once again. As of now, there's not any indication of high winds or other factors similar to last week's storm that may cause additional power outages, and that's about the only good news for the over 1,200 DTE customers who were still without power on Wednesday. Today, highs will be in the 40s, so much of last week's snow that remains on the ground may melt away just in time for another quick hit of precipitation on Friday morning. Winter wonderland. Am I right? More snow coming in. So, of course, you can stay up to date on everything you need to know about storms coming in by going to our ice page on civiccentertv.com/ice. We have links there to the DTE outage map, to the Consumers Energy outage map, as well as National Weather Service links as well. So you can keep up to date on everything you need to know about this impending bit of snow coming in tomorrow. Again, 3 to 6 inches is the current projection across southeastern Michigan. The snow will be gradually happening throughout much of the day on Friday, of course, with the most heaviest snowfall being in the morning during the morning commute. According to this, the storm is going to have rates of about half an inch to an inch expected to fall per hour on Friday morning. That's according to the National Weather Service, and again, is subject to change over the rest of the day today and into the early parts of Friday as more forecasts and updated forecasts come in from the National Weather Service and other sources. Also making headlines today from Clara Hendrickson at the Detroit Free Press, the Michigan House of Representatives passed a bill yesterday to repeal the state's right-to-work law, originally enacted by a Republican state Congress and Governor Snyder in 2012. State Democrats lauded the passing of the bill as a sweeping victory for union workers in Michigan, claiming that the 2012 law provided non-union workers with the benefits reserved for those in unions, but without paying union dues, giving power in this case back to the union members by repealing these two laws that made up the so-called right-to-work laws. Said one congressman, that being Jim Hadsma from Battle Creek, a Democrat, quote, "It restores balance in negotiations," end closed quote. Across the aisle, Republicans called the law a measure to pressure workers into joining a union rather than giving workers a choice in deciding if being a part of a union is the right decision for them at this moment in time or in their career. The bill passed on party lines by one vote in the House of Representatives, and now, of course, goes on to the Michigan Senate before it will eventually make its way to Governor Whitmer's desk should it pass in the Senate as well, but it was also a very slight majority for the Democrats. All Democrats in the House did vote affirmatively on this bill. There was no cross-party voting on this bill from the Republicans saying yes or Democrats saying no. So very narrowly passed in the Michigan House of Representatives. If it is to pass in the Senate, expect to have a similar result, and I expect it to then be signed by Governor Whitmer, as this was a key part of the Democratic platform in the past election in 2022, as the Republicans and the Democrats vied for the majority power in both chambers of the state Congress, those, of course, being won by the Democrats, this being clearly a very democratically supported effort from that party, and so I would expect to see in the coming days or in the coming week or so to see this bill also go through the Senate in the state of Michigan and eventually make its way to Governor Whitmer's desk, where it would then be signed into law and go into effect, of course, 90 days after the end of this congressional period at the end of the year, around November or December, because it's not going to have a large majority of either chamber of Congress voting affirmatively on this bill, because it is party lines, and those party lines, the majorities in both of these chambers of the state Congress, are so narrow. Finally, making headlines today on CivicCenterTV.com's local news page from Ben Orner at MLive. The state of Michigan has made its TikTok ban on government devices official, a decision that went into effect just over a week ago on March 1st, blocking the website on browsers and revoking the ability to open the app, but not to download the app, on smartphones and other devices associated with the state government. However, there are certain exceptions to the protocol, including use for law enforcement purposes, promotions, and cybersecurity measures. This has, of course, brought some controversy of late since this was announced, as Governor Gretchen Whitmer has multiple TikTok posts being made since the ban was announced to her over 200,000 followers on TikTok. However, the governor's office says that the Chinese-owned app only is being used on a separate non-government device that never crosses over onto a government network or goes within the governor's, quote, wireless environment, and closed quote. As I mentioned, Governor Whitmer has quite the large following on TikTok, over 200,000 followers on her account at this time. And so they're using this as a communication device from the governor's office to communicate with Michiganders and to build a following, get people to follow along with what's going on in the government. However, we're seeing not just in Michigan but in several states across the union and even at the federal level, bans on TikTok being considered because, as was mentioned, this is an app that's owned by a Chinese company that does have connections to the Chinese Communist Party, which is, of course, notorious, as many large governments, including our own, are, for using technology like social media apps to spy on those in other nations. And so there's, of course, a concern with that whenever there's a potential for a cybersecurity leak of any kind, especially in the government, that they nip that in the bud as closely and as quickly as they can before it becomes a major problem. And certainly you don't want other governments, especially adversarial governments like that in China or in Russia, to be able to have a way of accessing government devices, whether it be on a statewide level, local level, or of course on the federal level either. So that's why we're seeing a lot of these TikTok bans go into effect. And of course, it doesn't mean that these congressmen, congresswomen, and the governor aren't allowed to use TikTok at all. It's specifically on government devices. They can use them on their personal devices, but they cannot use them on a government network, so they can't use it on any of the networks set up at their congressional offices or in the state house or state senate or in other government facilities or on government networks either. And in the case of Governor Whitmer, her office has urged that she's not using TikTok on a government device or even on a personal device. It is a separate device that's being used specifically to access this app and is not crossing over onto a government network or even onto Governor Whitmer's devices. So her personal wireless network, that translating to her phone or any tablets, laptops, or other computers that may be accessed by the governor regularly, it's not crossing over into the same network as any of those, so as to not create any openings where those that could potentially be spying on the governor or trying to spy on our state and leak into our state networks through TikTok, they're not able to make that measure. So more information is on this in this article from Ben Orner at MLive. I encourage you to click through on it on our website at CivicCenterTV.com, on our local news page, as well as all those other headlines there making news today across our local area and around the state of Michigan. And at the top of our local news page, we have links to COVID-19 and other public health updates from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division. As this program was built out of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, it's transitioned over the last couple of years as COVID-19 concerns have slowed down and our society has really reopened to a lot of the normalcy we've seen before, albeit a little bit different in the post-pandemic, so to speak, post-pandemic world. We're not post-pandemic all the way. COVID-19 is not going away, so that's not necessarily something that's in our rearview mirror. That being said, you can always get more information on where things are going with COVID-19 vaccines, with the boosters, with case numbers in the state of Michigan and around the country and around the world by looking at those links from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division, and look up other public health issues and topics as well as we get toward the summer season. You can keep up to date on Michigan's battle against the West Nile virus, and same thing with Oakland County and other issues that may may come up, whether they're around flu or around other issues that do pop up here and there in our local community, as well as around the state of Michigan and around the country. All of that information from these reliable resources is directly linked on our website, on our local news page, on civiccentertv.com. And again, we're expecting another bout of a snowstorm tomorrow morning. 3 to 6 inches of snow is the current projection. So if you want to stay up to date on more information from the National Weather Service, from DTE Energy or Consumers Energy, look up the power outage map or report an outage yourself. All of those resources are also linked on civiccentertv.com/ice. We have a great show ahead on this edition of the Megacast. Coming up next, we'll have our weekly mental health segment with Carrie Krawiec from the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Stay tuned. This is the Megacast.
Like what you see? Beautiful works of art, masterworks of metal, and accomplishments of artistry will be on display near you. All kinds of artists from all walks of life come together to celebrate their skill and appreciate their work's beauty. Hot Works presents the 2023 Orchard Lake Fine Art Show. Stop by July 29th and 30th between 2 and 10 p.m. between Powers and Daly off of Orchard Lake Road.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important.
And now the same is true in the face of flu.
Influenza has the power to infect millions.
But it's easy to protect yourself, your family, and your community.
The flu vaccine is safe and effective. And with COVID-19 still around,
it's essential. Together we can face flu season head on.
Visit michigan.gov/flu.
It's that time of year, Greater West Bloomfield. Our towns gather together this March for the 5th annual State of the Communities. Important figures from Sylvan Lake, West Bloomfield, Orchard Lake, and Kego Harbor discuss the past year's projects and developments. Hear presentations from speakers, discussions on plans of action, and more. The 5th annual State of the Communities, March 13th at 7 p.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program and stay up to date with us on our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes state, including My Michigan TV, and find all of our full shows and each individual segment on demand as well. All of that information, all of those resources on civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now on the program for our weekly mental health discussion is Carrie Krawiec, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Carrie, thanks for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on with us as you are an expert in sort of relationship therapy and group therapy as well. And we're in a time of the year where we're just beyond the Valentine's Day holiday and some of these very grandiose and big gestures of love that happen then, and then things start to fizzle back to normal, and sometimes that can bring up a number of different issues in communication in these relationships, and that often has a major effect. And that can also affect them particularly when they're communicating over our devices. Nowadays, we are doing a lot of communicating with people all across our life, whether it's family or friends or work, on these devices, and there's certain things called fexting and phubbing that are big issues in relationships today, particularly fexting, which is a buzzword for fighting while you are texting. How does that change the dynamic when you're fighting over text with your significant other versus having those arguments in person and being able to really work those out in a one-to-one manner and in a timely manner?
Sure, their exact statistics aren't known, but it's probably pretty much anybody with a phone could say they've texted someone at some point. Even Jill Biden admitted that she and Joe, our president, may argue sometimes during text. So the great thing about texting, right, is that it's convenient. It's always available to us. If you have something to say, you can shoot it out. The problem is in our relationships, that's also true. So what happens when something even turns from pleasant conversation to a fight over text? You may say more than what you'd want to, too fast. You're saying it quickly without thinking or planning what you might say. You're not reading the feedback of the other person to know how it's being received. And you don't always know if it's necessarily reciprocal. You say something, then they say something in return. There may be cases where you're available, so you're putting everything on your mind out there, and they're going to get bombarded in an hour, or 3 or 4 hours, or after their workday with everything that you said. They may miss some of it. They may misunderstand some of it. Also with sarcasm isn't clear via texting. Emojis aren't clear. They have different meanings to different people. And you also can't do the other things that help make a fight worth, growing your relationship: physical touch, kind words, humor, things that can kind of soften a fight. Those also don't read through text.
So let's take a step back in this, because fighting over text has its benefits. It's quick. It's right there. It's convenient. You can do it any time. You can hash out these arguments, even if you're across the city, across the world, with your significant other. But ultimately, you're still having a fight. You're still having an argument. So taking that back to the very basic level, in a relationship, whether it is with a significant other or it's with family, friends, coworkers, what makes for a healthy fight or a healthy argument?
Sure, I think both people being ready, having calm physical, body, of course, a fight is going to stir some things up. But if your voice is raising, if you're getting more physically tense, there's going to be a start to break down. Of course, if you're getting louder or more, even using more swear words or more harsher language, more harsher body language, all of those things are going to cause a fight to break down. And so the other thing about texting, like we said, is that, one person may say, like, I don't want to do this right now. And in person, that person may leave or go to another room or something else. But on text, one may say, I don't want to do this right now. And if the other keeps rapid firing, the person who said they didn't want to do this is going to be basically assaulted, like someone ringing their doorbell constantly, even though they're pretending to not be home. So you're really causing the other person to escalate emotionally.
And then on top of that, even if you're having a healthy argument and you're having that healthy argument over text, at some point, people are going to get occupied. They may walk away from their phone. They may just simply not answer because they just don't want to do that at that time. And that can affect the other person involved too, and escalate things on top of that. And so you're not having that necessarily when you have an in-person conversation, because you can read those body language cues, and when someone walks away from it, you can physically see they're not into this right now. They don't want to be getting into this right now. And of course, you have the ability to cool things down by separating and clearly saying that things are getting too tense. That's something you don't really get over text.
Right. And like you said, we have not, although we've been texting for many years now, we haven't figured out many of the relational rules or kind of the social norms when it comes to it, and so some people will say, well, I've seen you read it, and I know you can respond quickly, so therefore you must. But there are times when it would be okay to be thoughtful or deliberate about an answer, or when you can't in fact respond, even though someone thinks perhaps you can, if you're driving or if you're in a meeting or some otherwise occupied. And like you're right, we can often jump to conclusions. I think even just having the etiquette of like, look, I'm about to get in my car right now, so I'm not going to be able to respond to this for the next 15 or 25 minutes. We often don't do that. We just keep it going a steady stream. It's really not helpful to us. So, creating some rules, or having some common etiquette. I'm not going to get to this right now, so expect me to return in a couple of hours. Because like you said too, for the person who's waiting to be responded to, they can escalate in that time, especially if they feel like they're being unjustly ignored, even if it is for a real reason.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec on today's edition of the Megacast, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, talking about arguments and other forms of distress in the communication of a relationship, especially over technology, particularly over text messaging and on our phones. And we think about these sort of situations, these sort of scenarios, and it really has a parallel. In some cases, it's a mirror image, too, of what we see on social media, where people get in front of a keyboard, or they get in front of their phone and behind the wall of a text message, and they have this sort of courage that is really, in many cases, just cowardice to say whatever's on their mind, completely unfiltered. So just at the most basic level, Carrie, what is it about being behind a keyboard, not being in person with someone, that gives people this sort of sudden confidence that I can say whatever I feel like saying, even if it's completely unfiltered and it's probably the wrong thing to say, even though I know on the other side there is more than likely a very real person there that's going to be really hurt by this?
Sure. And I think, right, there's probably a lot of factors. When a real person is in front of you, we may be flooded with some other body cues. Our voice may crack. We may feel anxious. We may start to cry, something like that. That doesn't tend to happen when that person isn't there. We also might be informed by some other things. We might have people cheering us on to say, yeah, say that, and then we're getting actually amped up, where, like you said, there's no real breaks to say, I don't know, is this going to be a good idea? So we don't have those other emotional cues. Our emotions are really a connection between our body and our mind and our environment. And so that veil of the screen makes it feel like our environment is sort of one dimensional. And so we don't really feel like the other people are actual people. But when they're with us, they're people that we love, they're people that we care about what they think of us, and those feelings then change.
More information and get in contact with Carrie and the other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, you can find them on birminghammaple.com. birminghammaple.com, where Carrie is, among other things, a marriage and family therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. And that really provide some great insight from you here, because these are things that really do happen in real relationships. And so for you as an expert in the mental health field, that is communicating with these couples and working through maybe some of these issues with real people and real couples, where do you start with this? If people are having issues with they're arguing, and these arguments have gone from being mostly in person to being over text, whether it is a couple that is still an active couple, or I think about a family therapy situation. Now, you think particularly about co-parents that may be divorced or may have not continued a relationship after they were pregnant, and have those arguments that come along with being a co-parent. Where do you begin with this, especially if these arguments have started to escalate, particularly over technology?
Sure. I think first and foremost, it's about boundaries and setting up some common ideas about what times are available, how long in a stream. That's the other thing about texting, is that an argument could start at some point in the morning and just sort of never finish, just keep going at different points throughout the day. And get recharged at different points about the day. So having some rules, like we're going to talk about this topic for this much time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something brief will help to confine it, will help to keep it contained. Otherwise, it's just like spilling out all over into everything. I think there's something we hadn't mentioned before. It's not just what you're saying, the actual words, but also what you mean, why you're saying them, how you're saying them. Communication is multiple different levels. So you may be saying something very honest and truthful, but even a short one-word answer conveys something, right? It might convey disinterest, it might convey manipulation, it might convey evasiveness. So you're communicating more than one thing at a time, and you get the most of that when you're doing it in person. You're always going to miss some layer of it and leave it up for interpretation if you're doing it via text message.
So obviously, from what we discussed, it's pretty obvious that having these arguments in person with someone else, especially a significant other, a co-parent, or someone that you have that close relationship in some way or another with, it's best to have that hashed out in person, one-to-one, so you can read all those cues and you can have a really thorough argument and understand where that other person is coming from. But given the convenience of text messaging and other technological communications, how do you set that good base? Because I feel like this is a really good opportunity for people that are in an argument or have something they need to hash out but aren't able to really get together one-to-one for a while, even if it's across that day or across that week or month, to really set that base. And when they do have that time to have that one-to-one discussion in person, they have that baseline of where each person's coming from, and maybe we'll be able to perhaps approach the argument from a better spot.
Sure. So, in person, even in person, we can be faster than we intend to, and we can miss things. And so one of the remedies recommended for in couples counseling is often what's called speaker listener. So one person talks and the other person repeats back what they heard, asks clarifying questions, make sure they understand it, and then it's their turn. So it's a much slower kind of back and forth. And I think that could probably really apply to texting. This is what you wrote. This is what I read. This is how I'm taking it, and this is my response given how I'm taking it. If there's something else that needs to be corrected or clarified, this is the opportunity to do that now before then the first person speaks again.
BirminghamMaple.com is their website to get in contact with Carrie and the other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. She joins us today for our weekly mental health segment on the Megacast. You can join us every Thursday morning for this segment on the Megacast, and always stay up to date with us on civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Carrie, another buzzword that creates a whole different issue in relationships over technology. It's not too much attention, it's the lack of attention, and that is phubbing. Tell us about phubbing.
So phubbing is snubbing your partner in place of your phone. So another thing we're all guilty of, perhaps. Our phones are designed to be attractive to us, right? They beep, they buzz, they shake our watches. They give us a lot of opportunities to distract ourselves from what we're doing, and that's done by design. So sometimes phubbing to our partner may feel like we're choosing another person over them, but sometimes we're choosing truly the inanimate object and just lights and sparkles and whatever else it's giving us over our partners. Like I said before, we communicate our words and what we're saying and we're doing, but we say you matter to me. But if a person's talking and we keep looking to our phone, we're actually conveying something else. We're actually conveying this matters more. And so to just be aware of that, to take measures, to put your phone on silent, dark. If you want to spend one-on-one time with your significant other, your child, your parent, your loved one, and you can't do it without the nuisance of being distracted, take measures to make that more private, and or create those expectations ahead of time. Look, I want to be here with you, but I'm expecting a certain call, text, email, alert, whatever, fill in the blank, mail coming to my house. I need to just pay attention, so allow the person to know that, and maybe also get some permission. Is it okay if I check it periodically? Or I'll let you know, excuse me, I want to hear the rest of what you're saying, but I do need to address this. So just adding the etiquette instead of just it being so automatic.
And that quality time is so important in these relationships too. But as you mentioned, life gets in the way, other things get in the way, we get distracted. These things are meant to distract us as much as they possibly can, and that can create a rift where you may be seeming like you're ignoring your significant other, you're not important to them. And there are some metrics on this that you actually have, Carrie, unlike what we had with texting. This is something that's pretty common.
Yeah, sure. I mean, many Americans report doing it and feeling it done to them. And I mean, I think that's the other thing too, is that it's not always like, here, time out, let's both check our phones, right? It's usually one maybe doing it in one scenario and the other's doing it in the other. Same with our, kids or other family members. We all have times when we want or need our own attention. So that's the other piece, is asking and advocating for it. Like, hey, I know you have a busy day or you're expecting X, Y, and Z calls, but right now I have something that needs, undivided attention, or else I'm going to feel really hurt. So going into a situation, setting the stage for what you want, as the person who's maybe perhaps wanting to not have the phone be an issue. And then the person who perhaps needs the phone for whatever reason at the time, also communicating what they need for that time and trying to create a shared sort of expectation for what's going to work for both.
More information and to get in contact with Carrie and the other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic can be found on BirminghamMaple.com. BirminghamMaple.com, or call them 248-646-6659. 248-646-6659, or info@BirminghamMaple.com via email for more information and get your questions and consultations met by the Birmingham Maple Clinic. All of this really comes back to establishing and maintaining strong communication with your partners or with significant others, with your family, whoever you may be communicating with, especially over technology, because so often today we are making these communications via technology with our significant others and with other people, sometimes simultaneously, and whether it be ghosting or it be phubbing or it be texting, there's so many different ways that we are using technology and having adverse effects in our relationship. So as we bring it all back and we as individuals are observing our own behavior and evaluating our own behavior, what should we really be looking out for and focusing on as we are relating not just to technology but to other people simultaneously?
Sure, I think especially in our more intimate relationships, the people that are very closest to us, what makes a family strong or a relationship strong, one of the things is shared expectations or shared rules. You know, I have what I like, my preferences, you have yours, but do we also have shared sort of a Venn diagram? Where do we align in the middle? And just kind of making sure for certain types of conversations, certain types of texting or, you know, whatever it is, whether it's watching TV together, whatever, do we talk during it? Do we not talk during it, right? Is kind of having a share, where do we align and making sure we stay within those boundaries, or at least align our expectations to those boundaries when we're having these conversations.
Again, more information and to get in contact with Carrie and the other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, especially if you're having these kinds of issues with your partner and these things are maybe better addressed with a neutral third party involved. BirminghamMaple.com is their website, 248-646-6659. We're joined by Carrie Krawiec, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, with us, as always, on Thursdays for our weekly mental health segment. And Carrie, a few more minutes with you before we'll wrap things up today. Anything else on texting or on phubbing or on other technology-related issues in relationships that we haven't discussed that would be important for individuals and certainly for these couples to consider at this time?
I think one neat idea is perhaps considering a device cleanse, you know, and separating yourself, but trying to do it at least certain hours of the day or for a certain period of days, to just kind of reset the power it has over you and to help slow you down, be more mindful and aware of what are you saying, what are you doing, what do you really need to say or do. Sometimes especially with texting, sometimes we may say something untrue too fast, or we may say something true that could be left unsaid too fast, and to just kind of be able to modify our reactions and take a little more time. And sometimes sort of a cleanse or a reset might be something that to consider to be able to do that.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to say things a little bit too late than to say bad things a little bit too early. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
BirminghamMaple.com is the website to get in contact with Carrie and the other great professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. You can also call them 248-646-6659. And, of course, join Carrie with us weekly on Thursdays here on the Megacast for our mental health segment. We'll take a break on the program. On the other side, it's that time of the year again. Get your dictionaries out, do some studying, get ready for the Scripps National Spelling Bee. We had some great students right here in Oakland County that have qualified for the national competition. We'll talk to Oakland Schools about that next on the program as they've gone through their whole process and all of our schools have gone through their spelling bees, and we've got some great spellers going into the national competition very soon. We'll be back next with our Oakland Schools Education Insider on the Megacast.
When the temperatures are chilly, being together warms the soul. Keep the winter fun going. Help protect yourself and those around you by keeping your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
1 in 4 Michigan homes has high levels of radon, a naturally occurring radioactive gas known to cause lung cancer. It doesn't matter where you live or what type of home you have. You won't even know it's there unless you test. So don't wait. Testing is cheap and easy. And if there's a problem, it's simple to fix. Visit michigan.gov/radon to learn more.
We took action. Will you?
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan, streaming everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Hello, nose. My nose knows is when somebody uses the bathroom. Mom, Pauline didn't flush. Ooh, I smell cookies. I smell an A+. How could my nose be running when it stays on my face?
Our noses know if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can always join us and keep up to date with us online, civiccentertv.com/Megacast. There's so many places throughout Oakland County, whether you're watching on cable television, and we thank you for doing that because cable subscribers are the lifeblood of stations like us that receive franchise fees from cable providers in our local area in order to operate and do everything we do here at Civic Center TV, whether it's programs like the Megacast every morning from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. or municipal meeting coverage or live event coverage out in the community, including something great we're doing next week during Sunshine Week. Sunshine Week is a week that's dedicated by journalists and government officials across the country to provide open and transparent access to government information and those that are in powerful positions in our communities. And so for Sunshine Week every year, for the last several years, we have hosted either usually in person, but during the pandemic virtually, and now we're back in person again with the event, the State of the Communities. The Greater West Bloomfield State of the Communities will happen next week, Monday, at 7 p.m. at the West Bloomfield Middle School, live and in person. So if you're in our flagship communities in West Bloomfield, Keegle Harbor, Sylvan Lake, Orchard Lake, or your kids are in the West Bloomfield School District, or you're just interested in what's going on in our local area, you are welcome to attend at West Bloomfield Middle School, the State of the Communities. And if you're not able to attend in person, or you just want to learn more about what's going on in your community, you can watch it live and live to tape on our website, civiccentertv.com, as well as on our channel, Civic Center TV, which is Comcast Channel 15 in the Greater West Bloomfield area, AT&T Channel 99 across southeastern Michigan on AT&T's Public Access Government and Education Channels guide. Just go down to West Bloomfield or Keegle Harbor, Sylvan Lake, or Orchard Lake and click on Civic Center TV, and you'll be able to watch all of our programming live. And of course, stay with us on our website for more information. We'll talk to the mayors of the Tri-Cities, Keegle Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and the city of Orchard Lake Village, as well as the supervisor of West Bloomfield Township, Steve Kaplan, will also be with us. And we'll have a discussion with Dr. Danya Bazzi, who is the superintendent of the West Bloomfield School District, about all the great projects happening in the West Bloomfield School District, certainly about the information that the community very much wants to know for this upcoming special election in May regarding the potential secondary bond here in the West Bloomfield School District. There was one a few years ago that led to the very middle school that we're going to be hosting this at, and now they're putting another bond up for vote in the community for more improvements throughout the school district, including some new elementary school buildings and other additional amenities and updates all throughout the school district. You'll be able to learn more information from Dr. Bazzi as Dave Scott moderates the program, talks with Dr. Bazzi, talks with the three mayors and the supervisor about everything going on in our community. That's ongoing projects and initiatives, some issues that may be upcoming and ongoing in the communities. There'll be a special Q&A segment between Dave and each one of these community leaders so you can learn more about what's going on in your hometown, including in the West Bloomfield School District. And while we're on that, school districts across Oakland County of late have been holding their annual spelling bees, putting competition and a little bit of learning all on the field, proverbial field in this case, as students compete to spell the biggest and the baddest words in the entire dictionary. That baddest being like the coolest words, not bad words. They don't do that. That would be bad. Joining us to talk about that at the county-wide level is Andrea Zellner, who is the learning design consultant at Oakland Schools. Andrea, thanks for being with us today, as Oakland Schools also did its regional spelling bee here for the 5th consecutive year.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on as we talk about this. You recently hosted your Scripps regional spelling bee. Tell us about that competition, how that all comes about at the county-wide level, and ultimately where those that succeed in that competition can go from there.
Right. So all of our spellers came across Oakland County from 71 different schools, both private and public. And those kids already won their local school bee. So it might be their elementary school bee or their middle school bee, and they were their champions. So we were so excited to invite them there to Oakland University, to the Oakland Center. And we all meet in a giant ballroom on Saturday, and we had 15 rounds of competition on Saturday. So it was really intense. After the first round, we still had 50 spellers left. So that gives you a sense of how incredible these kids and how brilliant they were. And at the end, we had Aryan Kadir as our champion with the word Macedonian. So, and he is just an incredible kid. He came late from his Science Olympiad regionals that he won. And then he joined us at the spelling bee. So we were really proud of him, from Baker Middle School.
And this guy just going around town winning everything last week.
And all he does is win.
Or qualifying in all of these at the very least, doing a great job. This is the 5th time that Oakland Schools has sponsored this at the regional level, and it makes it really a staple for families across Oakland County. But some would think from the outside looking in that, what's so important about this? It's just spelling. How does it benefit the students?
Yeah, so the spelling bee invites us to play around with language. So one of the things that I think is the biggest misconceptions about spelling is that our dictionary, we use the Merriam-Webster unabridged dictionary, so they can study any word from that dictionary. There is a word list of 4,000 words that Scripps puts out from the dictionary. And the reason that this is important is because understanding the roots of our language and the misconceptions around what's in the dictionary become really supportive of students' literacy overall. So in the dictionary, you will see these the word written out and then a parentheses with these funny little marks in them. And that's how we pronounce the word. And what's interesting is that those are descriptive pronunciations. The dictionary gives us the most common pronunciations. And so that is what we use as the pronouncer. So as kids are studying those words, they're becoming more familiar with all of the idiosyncrasies of our language. And then those understandings of those words support them when they go into more complex text. So the grade levels here, I think, are important as well. In grades 5th through 8, which is where the majority of our spellers are being pulled from, they're really learning to engage with more complex texts and more subject area disciplinary texts. And having that understanding of the language is super supportive for them. So the spelling is, I think, almost the least important part of this, but what's the most important is that they understand the roots of our language in order to make more sense when they get into text.
We're joined on today's program by Andrea Zellner, the learning design consultant at Oakland Schools, on today's program for a bi-weekly Oakland Schools Education Insight. You can always join us on Thursdays at 10:40 for this segment on the Megacast. And as you mentioned, you served as the pronouncer for the spelling bee, and there's always a table of judges that are going through different sort of roles in the spelling bee. So take us through your role and some of the other roles that they fill as well, because not only are the kids preparing for these spelling bees, those that are moderating them are also doing so.
It is a lot more preparation than I realized when they first asked me 5 years ago. They said, "Hey, do you want to do this thing?" And I thought, "Oh, sure. I don't know what I'm getting myself into." So if you've never been to a spelling bee, the way it works is there's a word list that we all are working from, and it's prescribed from Scripps. So we get this word list and we are studying from it. And I actually have my booklet right here so you can see it. And it's like filled with sticky notes and my own handwriting as I go through it. And what happens is that each kid comes to the podium and I say, "This is your word." And then I deliver the word. And as I'm delivering the word, the student can ask for alternative pronunciations. They can ask for the parts of speech. They can ask for the language of origin, the definition, and to use it in a sentence. Then there are 3 judges who are also working from the same word list to double check that I'm not making any mistakes, and also to write down exactly what letters the kids are saying. And there's a lot of strange idiosyncratic rules. I think my word of the day is idiosyncratic today because everything is a little bit goofy here. But what happens is that the kids can start spelling the word, but if you make a mistake, so if you spell the word B and you start B-E-A and then you realize you made a mistake, you can't go back. So you have to keep going with your words or the letters in the word that you're spelling. As a pronouncer, the second I get my word list, I start practicing, and Scripps provides me with audio files of all the words and their alternative pronunciations. And what's very difficult is that it's a lot of concentration to make your brain pronounce a word in a way that you're not used to saying it. So one of my examples is if you try to say a word like, I tend to say mischievous is how my pronunciation of the word mischievous. That is not the standard pronunciation. The standard pronunciation is mischievous. And there are other pronunciations of that same word. And Scripps will withhold regional pronunciations of a word if they feel that it will mess up the speller. So sometimes I'm pronouncing a word in a way that may not sound familiar to the speller because it's just not how our accent does it, especially with these Michigan accents we have. I have to be very precise in how I pronounce. So my family gets quite annoyed with me because every night I'm just going through this list, saying these words over and over and over again so that on the day I can just go by rote. So that's how everything works. And we also have people who have to help the kids get on and off the stage. And when they are out, it's pretty sad. It breaks our heart every time. So we have very kind people who escort the kids off to get their prizes because every speller gets a little gift bag from us.
As you mentioned, your favorite word of the day, idiosyncrasies. I think back to just a few years ago, a whole lot of eighth grade English students at West Hills Middle School would be getting a whole lot of extra credit from Mr. Honeyman, my 8th grade English teacher there, who used to give out extra credit if you saw some of our spelling words in your daily life and were able to prove that you actually saw or experienced them. But of course, he's now retired, so that's not the case. But it just goes to show like how often we do see these things pop up and the different ways that doing vocabulary tests or participating in a spelling bee can be of benefit to kids as they're expanding their vocabulary, and that's able to really help them across the board in their learning experience.
Well, even our winner this year noted that because his winning word was Macedonian, he knew that from Geography Bee, actually. And there are a lot of place names in the bee. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of proper nouns in the bee. And so you sort of just have to know how they're spelled in that case. And so it's interesting the way that the bee is playing with language and supporting kids and learning all kinds of new things, even beyond what we traditionally think of as, oh, I just need to know how to spell this word. It's really more of digging into our language. And for me, I think the most interesting words are the ones that come through other languages into English, because even then, the way that we say them or the way that we use them as they move into English can be very interesting and delightful as well. I think my favorite moment in the B this year was the word brouhaha, because you can say brouhaha a number of different ways. You can say brouhaha, you can say brouhaha, or brouhaha. And so we were all laughing together in the middle of the spelling bee because it was just so silly to say haha, all with all the different emphasis on the different syllables that day.
We're joined on today's program by Andrea Zellner, Learning Design Consultant at Oakland Schools, for our bi-weekly Oakland Schools Education Insider. And as we talk about these spelling bees, not everyone has to participate in their school spelling bee and ultimately get all the way even to the Oakland Schools spelling bee. But why should families really be encouraging their kids to participate in these spelling bees?
So that's an excellent question. I think for me, the spelling bee is first a celebration of our language, but also a celebration of those kids who may be a little bit more studious and not the sports kids. I don't want to generalize, but I think it's important for us to celebrate all of the brilliance of our kids, no matter how they're showing up, whether it's on the ball field or on the spelling bee stage. And that is truly important to me, that all of our kids feel seen and celebrated. Not to mention the demonstrated gains that kids make in their literacy skills when they have a true understanding of the roots of our language. So I'm talking about those times where we studied the root of circ, and you think of all the words, circle, circumvent, and kind of go through the list and understand what that root means for you as a reader and as a writer, and applying that to your daily work. It really does improve comprehension and those types of skills. But it is a labor of love. It takes a lot of intense practice for the students. Our winners routinely thank their parents or their grown-ups in their lives for practicing with them, and their teachers as well. It also takes a dedicated team at the school level to put on a production like this. It takes a real village, and that is time. So we want to recognize and thank all of our volunteers who make these bees happen, because it really is a joyful moment for everyone to celebrate that spelling bee winner and engage in the weirdness of our language and just marvel, how did they even know how to spell it? That's incredible. So yeah, that's why I think we should do it more.
We have a few more minutes with you, Andrew, before we'll need to wrap things up for the day. But while we have that time, tell us about the finalists. Ultimately, those kids that were able to get to the pinnacle of this competition and qualify then for the Scripps National Spelling Bee.
Yeah, so now that we have our winners, so this year the final round ended up with 3, and then it went down to 2, and they were back and forth. And I was just astonished at how amazing they were. So we had Yashvina Gadla was our runner-up, and her brother Vikram went a few years ago. He was our winner in the 2020 the Oakland Spelling Bee, and he went on to Washington D.C. So this family is really intense with the bee, and we love them. It was so wonderful to see the siblings come through to the regional spelling bee. And then, of course, Aryan will be going off to 6 days in Washington, D.C., where he'll participate in the national bee, and they have multiple rounds of written spelling and oral definitions before they even meet the big stage for the final competition that is generally televised on ESPN as another celebration of our spelling bee fever.
We're joined on the program today by Andrea Zellner, who is the Learning Design Consultant at Oakland Schools on today's program. You can join us every other week for more information on everything going on in Oakland Schools and all the great projects they're working on, including their spelling bee. And for those that may be preparing for next year's spelling bee, or parents or teachers that want to help their students advance through their more localized and then regional competitions like the one through Oakland Schools, what's your advice for them in the future as they prepare for next year's spelling bee?
my advice is to start with those words of champions lists and study, but also really get to know those languages of origin, the sounds they make. French makes certain spellings related to sounds as opposed to English, or Greek and Latin roots are all going to be a little bit different. So really paying attention to those patterns in the words is the real key, because eventually, even if you memorize all 4,000 words on the Words of Champions list, eventually we move off that list and you just have to know how the words work.
We're joined on today's program by Andrea Zellner, Learning Design Consultant at Oakland Schools, who just completed its regional competition for the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Andrea, another minute or so with you before we'll need to wrap things up today. Anything else that you would like us to know that we should know about this year's competition or competitions of this kind in the future with Oakland Schools?
I think just the big thing is to celebrate our winners and just keep encouraging the kids at home to study our language, enjoy it, and play around, understand that language evolves and changes, and it's just an interesting thing to study, and you never know where it might take you, maybe all the way to Washington, D.C.
Well, we appreciate having you on to tell us about this competition, and of course, a big congratulations to our finalists from Oakland County and from Oakland Schools. Andrea, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You as well. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Megacast. As always, you can keep up to date with us on our website on civiccentertv.com/Megacast. There, you'll find information about every single one of our partnering stations. We have links to all of their channels on TV, on the radio, and on the web, so you can explore great original programming from all across Oakland County and throughout the state of Michigan, on our co-flagship as well, My Michigan TV. All of those are linked on our website, civiccentertv.com/Megacast. In addition, usually by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, our full shows and each segment are also uploaded on our website on civiccentertv.com/Megacast, so you can watch us on your time in the afternoons or in the late mornings, whenever you are able to join us for the Megacast. And of course, we always invite you to join us for our live shows weekdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Big thank you to Carrie Krawiec and Andrea Zellner for being on today's program, as well as our dedicated crew at the studio of My Michigan TV. It's Jared Clark, and our director, as always, here at Master Control at Civic Center TV is Calvin Brown. That's our show for today. Until we see you next time, take care of each other, and we'll be back very soon.